Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature successful business leaders, authors, top law firms, green energy companies, and more. Today, we're joined by the founder and CEO of DataDrive, Luke Komiskey. Luke, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
All right. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and a hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLynx intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 security operations center, we monitor your computers, networks, and cloud accounts using a combination of AI and highly skilled cybersecurity technicians in real time to detect any signs of attack or intrusion. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Luke, thanks for coming on. I've got a million questions for you. You are the founder and CEO of DataDrive. And for those who aren't familiar, can you give them the elevator pitch, if you will?
Yeah, so you can kind of tell by the name of the company, DataDrive. I'm in the realm of data. I've been a longtime data analytics nerd, love playing around with data. And the services that we provide for our customers is called managed analytics services. And so people are very familiar with what managed services are. They're often the people that are setting up laptops and changing passwords. But managed analytics services puts a special focus on everything around data analytics and helps organizations that may not have the team of professional data practitioners, the data scientists, the data engineers, to be able to pull together a end-to-end reporting system. And so what we provide for them is building out all of those data integrations, store their data, and ultimately drive insights to their team, to their community, to their customers, to their vendors. Wherever they want to send their data, we can send it there.
I love it. So let's dive into the weeds, the nuts and bolts of that, if you will. So who's your target market there? What's your ideal client look like?
Yeah. We work with organizations across a lot of different industries. There are certain ones that we particularly focus on, but the best candidates for us, for starters, are people that want to take their data analytics and reporting to the next level and often don't have a dedicated IT team or particularly a dedicated data leader. And so oftentimes I think what small business leaders go through is they have their team living and breathing within spreadsheets, trying to put together insights around what was revenue and margin last year, which customers are our best customers, really basic questions around business performance that take a really long time and are really built on this house of cards of a lot of spreadsheets. And so any organization that is really looking to take their data to the next level, pull it in from disparate systems because not one application holds all of your business operations data, and want to put together intuitive reporting, AI-driven insights on the front end. Those are ultimately our target customers. And as far as like industry niches that we've served, we work with a lot of growing SaaS companies. We've got media agencies where we pull together all of their digitally native data with traditional media data. And we even are helping support school districts. So helping teachers and superintendents and principals be able to pull in near real-time insights around attendance, behavior, and grades for students. You can imagine every single industry has some kind of data that they're looking to pull in, and we can bring it into one central spot to really drive smarter, faster decision-making.
Super cool. So what size company is your kind of typical client? What let's say the smallest that you think would make sense? And then obviously I think this applies to companies of almost any size, but what would then be on the larger end?
Yeah, for on the smaller end of it, I mean, generally it's what I call organizations that have their basic business model figured out. And so oftentimes what that means is maybe north of 10 million in revenue, or at least some kind of decent headcount of 20, 25 people that are dedicated to various business lines or driving operations. I think at that point, that can be our service can be a really compelling part of the conversation, because they know they are collecting a lot of data, and they have a lot of maybe different product lines or different ways that they're trying to go to market. And they've got their core product figured out, but now they're trying to figure out what is that competitive edge for us to go to market faster or to optimize around our expenses in some way. And so those are the ones that are super data curious that can be a great client that we can help grow with. But yeah, to your point, like we work with organizations of all sizes. There are organizations that we help are more in the 250, 300 million revenue range. And we continue to still partner today from a consulting perspective with Fortune 500 companies. So a lot of great logos we've had opportunity to partner with. And what's great about data is that it's in every business, and everyone has the same problems of living and dying in spreadsheets.
They sure do. And I love that you say that, because I think that just about everybody can relate to that. I also have to point out that I love that data curious. That's a great phrase. I haven't heard that one before, but I love it. Data curious. So let me ask you, DataDrive offers, is this purely a kind of a managed services, like an ongoing thing? Is it more of a consulting? We come in, get things squared away. What's it look like?
Yeah, and part of this will start to be more uncovered as we talk about just the history of how DataDrive is what it is today. But managed analytics services is truly that perfect middle spot between like bespoke consultants that come in and build a solution and leave, and a pure product play where it's off the shelf and there's really no customization. I think what we've discovered about data analytics solutions is that, yes, there are a lot of similarities between industries, that a lot of companies run largely 80% of the way the same, but there's always that 20% nuance that is essentially kind of like that secret sauce of why that organization is differentiated in their market. And so I think it's hard to completely productize how you build out any kind of data platform, because I think there's always something about how they run their business that needs to be accounted for. But at the same time, our history has long been seeped in traditional consulting. And I think the biggest challenge we saw for consulting, especially for the small, mid-sized organization range, is when you bring on data professionals to build something amazing and they build you this beautiful executive dashboard, they will build it, deliver for you, and they leave because they've built that product and it's working. But data evolves, operations evolves. And we found that a lot of our customers, as they grow their business, there's new applications, there's new nuances that need to be captured. And so what we provide with managed analytics services is an ongoing partnership that's not only training your team on how to use the insights, but also providing almost like a fractional data leader perspective on how could you be competitively using your data as an advantage. And many of our customers actually go as far as, create new revenue streams where they're providing reporting externally to their environment. And so we guide and drive a lot of that product strategy of even how you can make money off the data your team is already creating.
I love that. So you kind of hinted on it. Let's talk about the founding. How can you give us your founder story? Because we love it. We love diving into the weeds there. So can you tell us the story of DataDrive? How did it come to be?
Yeah, it all started way back, and I have a computer science degree. I've always loved working with computers and programming. I love piecing together how technology can kind of fit into a broader pattern. I was fortunate enough to have my first career as in the data industry just by sheer luck. It was either join a data team or like build mobile apps, because that was like the thing to do when I graduated college. And I loved everything about a data because it was this intersection of bringing really cool technologies to the table, but also have an opportunity to work alongside business leaders and marry up the vision between those two. It can be really powerful. And I love that data continues to grow and grow every year as more and more people realize how powerful that can be. Throughout my career, I've worked in full-time corporations, big organizations. I've worked for bigger consulting shops, really had an opportunity to understand what goes in just to how you manage a consulting agency. And then ultimately in 2016, my wife and I both quit our jobs, sold everything, and traveled the world for a year. We called it a quarter life retirement. We essentially took the down payment that was going to go towards our first house and blew it all on world travel for all of 2016. And being a true data guy that I am, I even had the spreadsheet that would track to make sure that we would hit our metric of $50 a day per person. So every meal, every flight, every insurance payment, I was all aligning around my big KPI of $50 a day per person. But I think it was during that time in 2016 where, I was essentially just unemployed for 12 months. But about halfway through that trip, I just was finding myself super bored in these hostels in Southeast Asia, being around other like digital nomads that were running their business. And I've always had this like entrepreneurial itch, but I think being around them and missing a lot of the data work I was doing, I started picking up data analytics contracts, and it was like 10 hours a week, nothing major. But I think that's when it really, for me, I could kind of run the numbers in my head of saying, like, if I can make this much doing 10 hours a week, living in Southeast Asia with just the clothes on my back, imagine what I could do when I get back to the US and start to build something out. And so kind of fast forward to January 1st, 2017 is when I started DataDrive. And for me, it's like, it was the bet I wanted to take on myself of, could I keep myself busy enough with this data work? And really all of 2017, that first year of operation was just an experiment of like keeping Luke busy. And fast forward to today. I mean, we're 7 years into that journey. And I would say the large part of the first 4 years, I ran it like what I knew from other past experiences, a very traditional professional services driven agency. That of course like has everything that people talk about, where I think it's relatively air quotes easy to start, but it is a pain in the butt to scale, because it has a lot of really talented, well compensated people that you need to constantly be filling up a sales pipeline. And as I kind of move through my agency owner experience, I think that's when I realized I didn't enjoy the constant pressure of like with a pure services agency to always be like 90 days away from bankruptcy. It always kind of felt like I had to find that next project to keep this growing hamster wheel keep going. And then that is where we really found this niche around helping small business owners be able to grow their data capability, but for the long term. And I've loved everything about shifting a lot of our business model to managed analytic services, because it's not only subscription revenue for us, which is great, but it also creates an opportunity for us to partner and go deeper with analytics than we ever were able to by just being a one-off project consultant that came in.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously the managed services model is a lot more stable. There's so many benefits to it. And I love that you've done that. You've applied that to the analytics side. And I think that's fantastic. So how did you deal with that transition from the kind of the consulting work of always having to bring in new clients to then transitioning to the managed services? Did you find that to be challenging, scary, difficult?
Yeah, all the above. It is really hard to kind of build a totally new way of doing business in the midst of like running a particular business model. And I was fortunate enough that we were starting to, do small tests of this managed service model while we were still running the full services agency. And so we had a solid, call it 2.5 year time frame where we were kind of running both at the same time. And I think that's when I started to realize like the kind of P&L operations and all of the stress that was going on between the two. I knew that long term, the managed analytics services, there's a place there. There's a lot of customer challenges around like making sure you can build an analytics solution, but then also have somebody around that can manage that and maintain that. And so I think in large part of what happened over the last, call it 2 years, kind of that post-COVID timeframe, I think a lot of the upheaval that's going on within the tech industry really helped more or less like force my hand into having to like lean in and figure out which business model I wanted to go with.
Yeah.
And it just so happened around that time was the birth of my second child. So in many ways, like being a parent that's already got trimmed down time, I knew that for my own sanity, and I think for just building out a healthy business that I was going to be excited to go to each and every day, I wanted to make that shift. And yeah, a number of difficult decisions that go into trying to shift away from the model that we had, but we did it in a very data drive way, a very meaningful human centric way, and I'm really excited about that journey because it taught me a lot about myself as a business owner. And I love the business that we run today because I think we're just able to provide so much more, and I've got so much more of my sanity personally.
It's great. I love that. So let me ask you, when you first started out, how did you go about getting that first client? How did that come? Where did that come from?
It certainly helps having a background in consulting because it opened up at least an immediate business network that I could lean on, both past clients and as well as ex like coworkers that I worked at the consulting agency. So there's definitely an edge to getting into consulting early and just kind of building that network through that experience. Of course, it also helps like taking a year off in between to let any non-competes expire. But when I got back to the U.S., I remember a lot of that first 2 months was at me every day, going to Starbucks, of course, and sitting down and dedicating myself to 15 customized LinkedIn messages or 15 customized emails. So I was not doing a spray and pray approach. I was really trying to like reach out to my immediate network because they knew of my skill sets. And I think what I've learned about that too is I didn't really fully appreciate how much you really had to niche down or at least make it dangerously easy for somebody to say yes to you. I learned that the hard way of like sending out a LinkedIn message saying like, I'm a data guy, I can do data stuff for you. But that puts a lot of work on your prospect to figure out like, where am I going to fit you into this puzzle?
Yeah.
And I think it was really important for me to go through that journey of trying to find that first client, because I think all of those rejections of people like, yeah, I'll keep you in mind, which means they probably won't. It allowed me to really like hone in on what is the unique thing I can bring to market so I can make it dangerously easy for somebody to sign up and work with me.
That's fantastic. So then getting to that point, so you're getting all these no's. How did you get to that first client? So did you have to fine tune your pitch and your model and say, hey, look, we do data analytics specifically for this kind of industry? Or how did, and then who was that first client? How did that go?
Yeah, ultimately, like I had to hone in on, I could have gone the industry route, but I honed in on certain software technology that I was really experienced in and known in. So a good partner to this day continues to be Tableau, which is an industry-leading data visualization tool that has now been acquired by Salesforce. So people are probably bound to know one of those two softwares. And ultimately, because I was able to lean in on my like Tableau expertise, I think that made it easier for my first prospect, which is Village MD. I haven't talked to them in a while, but Village MD was my first customer that signed up. I got introduced to them from a friend of a friend that worked there that introduced me to the right people. I remember being incredibly nervous about just like that first round of negotiations of like trying to figure out like what hourly rate can I get away with. And I remember I was very intent on trying to build a consulting agency that was very focused in the Minneapolis market. My whole value prop was like, oh, I don't have to go to an airport. And my first consulting gig was like in Indiana. So I had to go fly to do my own consulting engagement. So it's funny. I was willing to take whatever I could. But what I learned from that was I really like, I look back at everything I did about that project, like over delivered to the max. I wanted every reason for that customer to, be able to refer me, to extend me, just the amount of rigor that went into like almost like daily project reports of what I was working on. It was like, I knew that for me to make this work and not just sputter out after one consulting engagement, like I wanted to over deliver for them. And thankful for that experience. They gave me great recommendations that ultimately led to more and more customers throughout the year. I think by the end of year one, I had worked with 16 different unique organizations.
Nice.
Many of them were even Fortune 1000 companies. And so you can imagine freelancer Luke had 8 different laptops sitting at his home office that he had to switch between to like look at inboxes for. It was a little crazy.
That's fantastic. I love that. That's a great story. So then at what point do you go from freelancer Luke, all by himself, figuring things out, to the next stage? When is there a Luke 2.0 that joins, if you will?
I remember going into the first holiday season. So I started in January 1st, 2017. And so about a Thanksgiving timeframe, 11 months later, is around that time where I knew I was onto something. I had a business that could keep Luke busy forever. And I think I remember that moment of making that choice of like, do I just want to keep the freelance business that just allows me to live a great lifestyle? Or do I want to try to grow something that lives beyond me? And I think for me, I'm so like in that moment, I think it was pretty much a 50-50 thing of like, let's just try it and see what happens. I look back now and I'm so thankful for making the decision to scale out and finding that first employer, or at least like a contractor to bring in, because it has always been like a learning journey, a challenge, a struggle to like figure out every single piece of like business operations. And I look back now of like, and get back to like, you know, how I brought on that contractor, but I look back now on all of those operations lessons that I've learned about how to manage people, how to build org charts, how to market for multiple people, how to build a sales team. In that moment in November of 2017, like if I decided just to be freelancer, like I don't know if I would have had the beauty of the journey of learning all of that stuff. But yeah, it was, I remember it was just a week after Christmas of 2017 where I was able to bring on my first, at the time, 1099 contractor. But then I think only a few months later, we converted into W-2 as an employee. And that really started that journey of like figuring out, okay, how do I run my business with other people, through other people, and so that I could open up more time to actually focus on the business, which has, you know, just been an absolute joy and struggle at the same time.
That's great. Well, and then it was what, almost 3 years later that you make the transition to the managed services. Is that about right? 2-3 years?
Yeah, the timing of it was, went through the roller coaster of COVID with more of the traditional consulting model, but I think that was also what forced our hand a little bit more of business was like dead, and then it took off like crazy, and then it became dead again. And so, yeah, it was about probably 3-4 years into that journey where I had a lot of more kind of traditional W-2 employees trying to learn different things around how do I build out a marketing team and a sales team and like think about all those other operational things where I saw the opportunity to move into managed analytics services for all the reasons I discussed. But for the most part, for the main reason of I wanted to move to a business model that didn't feel so much like the roller coaster and the hamster wheel or whatever analogy you want to use of just traditional consulting growth.
Yeah. Well, and I love kind of, obviously I get into the details of things, right? Computer science guys, that's kind of what we do, right? So I love that too. The learning the whole marketing, the sales stuff, the actual running of the business. So in your journey, what was the kind of marketing and the sales kind of journey that you took? Were there, I think everybody's learned a lot of sometimes very expensive, sometimes painful lessons, and sometimes you get it you do a pretty good job right out the gate. So I'm kind of curious, how did that go for you? Kind of the big lessons learned, the big wins. What path did you take there?
Yeah, keeping in mind that I have like a computer science background. So by no means natural, or not natural, but not trained in any kind of like sales methodologies. But I think for me, it was a lot of different trial and error. And some of the paths that I took was early on, I tried hiring just a traditional salesperson that had the great Rolodex and, go call the people, bring the deals to me. We can figure out how to get them across the finish line. That wasn't that successful because
That's pretty common.
Yeah. It all goes back to, I think it's easier for someone like myself to be able to like jump in a sales call, not really know where the conversation is going to go, but be able to like cast the vision of like what I can do with people. That is really unfair to expect of a salesperson that doesn't own any part of the company to like figure out that finesse, right? If they had that skill, go start a company. And then the other thing that has been more successful are kind of two different ones. One was leaning in on, I mentioned earlier about my Tableau background. So leaning in on vendor partnerships has been a big part of our success. There's a lot that goes into just like understanding what a software vendor needs and wants, but in many ways, like these software vendors don't want to build out professional services because they're in the game of selling software licenses.
Yeah.
But they also have the benefit of thousands of salespeople that are doing the hard work of cold calls and like finding customers that fit that niche for you. And it took me a while to really like figure out and lean in on that strength, but that has been a big part of our success is like aligning ourselves with vendors so we can still make customers successful and be, very like unbiased in how we deliver, but knowing that they fit one of those critical components that make them a good target client, which is that they use the software that we just happen to know to use really well and can make successful for people.
Right.
And then the other one that's been a lot of fun for me personally trying to figure out is just more of the, I guess, traditional marketing tactics. But the one that I've been really digging into over the last 2 or 3 years has been SEO, organic search. So I've done a lot, especially with like the rise of AI, not spamming a bunch of AI generated articles, but using AI as a helping tool for me to like create good table of contents and like organize my technical knowledge into something that people will actually care about.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been able to put out a lot of really compelling articles that are driving at least a lot of eyeballs to our website. And I'm really proud to say, like, from my like direct competition, that we've got by far the highest web traffic coming into our. I mean, we're B2B, so it's not like crazy high traffic, but
Sure.
We have a lot of eyeballs that look at our articles, and that continues to be a big part of when I jump on sales calls. People are like, "Oh, I read that one helpful article that helped me get through this technical barrier." And so again, it makes that sales process so much easier when they already feel comfortable and know you because you've given them some advice, but allows you to give more advice at scale, which has been a lot of fun.
So now, when you say your articles, I'm assuming you're talking about your blog posts, right? And
Yep.
how are you you post them there? Are you marketing them at all, or is it you're just using SEO and trying to get backlinks to those? What's your strategy there?
Yeah, my two strategies have been doing keyword research to figure out in my B2B space what are like those high volume enough keywords that I can build articles around. We do promote them a little bit just like on our company pages, but I think there's like limited distribution you can kind of get nowadays through those. But we found that if you give it enough time, 6 to 12 months, a lot of those articles are now like right below the main vendor's links. And so there's a lot of traffic that is flowing through that because frankly, I just don't think people are competing in the same like B2B SEO space like that. The other thing that I've really spent probably the last year and a half more focused on is LinkedIn growth and founder-led LinkedIn content. And so instead of trying to rely on just like posting helpful articles through DataDrive's company page, but I do a lot of just thought leadership, if you want to call that, interesting things to say, contrarian things to say on my LinkedIn. And while it may not get like the most engagement of like the people that get thousands of likes on it, I join sales calls. I go to conferences now where people are like, "Oh, I like what you've said on LinkedIn," which is kind of a cool feeling, right? Like you
100%.
you never engaged with my content, but here you are reading my stuff.
Yeah, LinkedIn's funny like that, and that's why I love having these conversations because the traditional marketing lasted for decades. I mean, just decades. The same thing. The you know the Madison Avenue ad men. They really had it set for the longest time, and fine, that was great. But now it changes so much. There are so many nuances to modern marketing, and I think LinkedIn's a funny one because you're right. People don't like everything like they might on Instagram because they don't necessarily want to populate all of their connections feeds with, oh, Matt likes this, Matt likes this, Matt likes this. So I think there's a natural reluctance to it. But you're right. You're getting those eyeballs and people appreciate it even if they're not liking it or interacting with it at all. So that's really interesting. So on your LinkedIn post, your strategy there is it you post things separate from what you talk about in the blog? Are you taking that? How often do you post on LinkedIn? Let me ask you that.
Yeah, I still haven't got a consistent enough cadence to it. On a good week, I can hit about 5 times a week. I do try to do once a day if possible, but I'm not hardcore enough to go weekends. I keep going through like ebb and flow of like when I'm in that, but my goal is one post a day. And my strategy for it is really not to necessarily drive people to a particular blog article, but I think the LinkedIn algorithm continues to evolve, but what tends to work really well are if you want a lot of impressions, you talk about some either current news or kind of generic advice that's maybe related to your industry. So like, for instance, one of my best performing posts, if you want to call that, was around like what I look for when I'm hiring a data analyst, because there's a lot of data analysts looking for jobs on LinkedIn. So that creates a lot of audience. But then other posts that I talk about tend to be more niche around just like maybe the pains of organizations that have been trying to live off of spreadsheets or ways to think about data automation that you might not be thinking about. Now, a lot of my eyeballs are other, full-time data professionals. So like they don't find that probably terribly interesting because it seems pretty basic to them. But there are other people that need to be educated around like what are opportunities that you can do in this data space. And so it's a lot of education around that. I don't tend to promote any particular like blog posts because they tend to be a little bit more greenfield keywords that I'm trying to just see if I can capture some audience for.
Interesting. Yeah, and I was talking to a branding expert, and they focus on social media, and they were saying that the kind of currently what they found is you want to post 2 to 3 times a week to reach the top of your followers' feed. So if you're posting at least 2 or 3 times, you don't have to do the 7 days a week, or take the Alex Hormozy or approach of 16 times an hour. It's just the 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 rather a week, and you end up kind of, as at least like, and you said LinkedIn, their algorithm's always changing, but as of now, 2 or 3 tends to get you to the very top of all your followers pages. So even if you don't have those people who really deep dive in LinkedIn and they only spend a few minutes, you end up being kind of top of mind because you're posting frequently. So I think that kind of explains your great success there, or at least there's definitely a link there. So well done. That's great.
Yeah, it's been a fun part of just like figuring this out, right? Like I've enjoyed playing around with it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, have you done anything in terms of like a pay-per-click advertising, Google AdWords, anything like that?
Yeah, we've attempted a little bit. I wouldn't say that we didn't execute probably our best on just like more of the pay-per-click advertising. That's something I'm interested in, but frankly, we get enough lead flow from other free methods that there's just no incentive for me to turn that on, which is a good problem to have.
I love that's the ideal solution. I don't even think that's a problem. That's fantastic. So, what's your main driver of leads now? Is it web? Is it LinkedIn? Is it what are your main drivers?
Yeah, it's there are a good steady flow of web leads that come in. Our partner channel is another good one that continues just to bring a consistent amount of conversations at least we can have.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I've had a lot of fun playing around with too, of like data guy just figuring out other marketing stuff, is like cold email campaigns have been surprisingly more effective than I would have ever imagined. Maybe I just get really bad spammy emails that I'm like, this will never work. But we put a lot of effort into the language we use on it and design it. But I still feel weird like sending it to somebody who like probably didn't want another email. And yet it seems it's weird though. It's not like somebody reads that email and instantly like picks up their phone and like, Luke, we need to talk. It's 9 months later, I'll randomly get an email of like, hey, my boss forwarded this to me. We should talk. And I'm like, wow, that actually worked.
Who knew? It's funny because I've heard multiple times that cold email is actually kind of in a bit of a resurgence in effectiveness, not just in use. Because I think I think maybe perhaps it's gone through an evolution of, it was just complete garbage spam where everybody was getting, all the Viagra ads. It's like, how, right? And the Nigerian prince scams, and just there was so much. And then I think as that industry has kind of evolved, and we've gotten better with spam filtering, and people have kind of enforced better list standards. I think that's helped, so that now when people get a cold email, it's not necessarily instantly spam or instantly. So kind of going down that route. And this is so much fun talking to a data guy, because you're like, yeah, you're not going to get bored. Some people are like, I don't like the details. I'm a big picture guy. Data guy, I know you're like, yeah, let's dive into the details. Ask me the numbers. So on your lists, how do you build your lists for your cold email?
Yeah, so we have two main methods that we go at. Well, three. One is just people looking at our blog and signing up just to like be notified. That's a steady flow of people. We also do a lot of so I take advantage of people who start following me on LinkedIn as an audience that we can go after and do kind of more direct messages towards. Again, I think there's a whole like finesse of like not being really super slimy about, hey, like what can I do to make you buy a data service today, but like authentically trying to see like, hey, is there something I can help you with, and does that happen to relate to somebody I know who I could direct you towards, or hey, even me, because you might read through the lines of like, oh, he is probably willing to help on some data problems I'm having.
Mm-hmm.
And then otherwise we use like just like some lead scraping technologies, a bunch of different tools. And another fun one that has been a really great tool for us is like taking advantage of Fiverr contractors, not taking advantage, using Fiverr contractors to help identify some of like our target audience just using some public information. So very targeted Google searches, or even more like next level advanced Google searches to find out where certain mentions of, since I'm in the data space and we happen to connect to certain applications, I can look for businesses that are using that application, because that's a pretty good sign that they would be a target audience for me.
Nice.
So I can use that knowledge of knowing that if you happen to use, I'll make one up, like Salesforce, you might be a really good candidate for our services, because we happen to have a bunch of dashboards and integrations that are already set up to be successful with Salesforce. And so it compels me to find people that have like a similar application stack, because it just makes our implementation easier, and it gives a prospect comfort knowing that we speak their software language.
Absolutely. Now, you kind of, and I loved all of that. I think that's fantastic. You kind of glazed over the what you called lead scraping. So when you say lead scraping, what exactly do you mean? Where are you scraping, and for what kind of leads?
Yeah. It all kind of different. Like one of the main ones that I like using is Apollo. It's for finding like LinkedIn connection information. But just with the nature of like, again, the fact that if we know that you're using a certain application, we can use that to our advantage. There are things like, well, either like public websites. If you're a school district, it's easy to like find that contact information. Or if you're more of a private institution, you might happen to be hiring for somebody who knows that technology that we know how to connect to. And so I can scrape through things like LinkedIn Jobs and Indeed to find that information.
I love that stuff. That's been 100% love it. So these things I find so interesting. So, and it's funny how many, how this affects different businesses and how they go about it differently, because it's so different today than it was 30 years ago. And it just changes so rapidly that it's funny, as an algorithm changes, you might be, Google might be your bread and butter, or Facebook or LinkedIn, your bread and butter. And then they change the algorithm and you go from making all your money there to making nothing overnight. And so it's really interesting. So I love this stuff.
And that's all like stuff I think about too, because because of COVID, it's harder than ever, I think, to like get the audience of somebody. It's easy for somebody to like accidentally skip your Zoom meeting because they just don't have to join. Conferences, I think, are going to see like a resurgence as people want to get more in-person events. But for the longest time, like one of my secret strengths was I'm a data guy that hopefully isn't that boring to talk to. So I could really thrive in face-to-face and like conferences. And so COVID was really tough for me to have to like almost retool, like, how do I find people who even want to like take audience with me? And even now, like, as I talk about it, I'm like thinking, I'm trying to caveat in my head of like, SEO is going to be fundamentally changed because of Google implementing AI on their search engine. Cold email is going to be changed because of all of these limits of like, if you get marked as spam too often, they'll like essentially like denial list a lot of your emails. And so like, I feel like marketing in particular, like capturing the attention in a virtual world is like, it is a moving target right now. And it is like really tough. It's fun, but it's like frustrating.
100%. Yep. And I think everybody shares in that. And you hear these people say they've got the answer. You don't, because it changes so quickly. You might have had it, 2 years ago when you started, selling that, and now it's changed. And so it's fun to kind of stay up on what people are doing and where they're finding success and what isn't working anymore. So I love having those conversations. Well, Luke, this has been a blast. I know we're running close on time, and I could do this, I think, for another 6 hours easily. And but before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about DataDrive and you, and how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is datadrive.com, and that'll have more information about our managed analytics services. And then we also provide things like managed white labeled portals that we haven't talked about either, where organizations, that they're looking to effectively monetize their data, can build hosted web portals that their insights are sitting on in a very secure way. So if you want to learn more information about the company of DataDrive, it is at datadrive.com. And like I just mentioned, I'm very active on LinkedIn and would love to connect with you there and message with me there. So you can also find me on LinkedIn under Luke Komiskey.
That's awesome. We may have to have you back on to go into the white label portals. That sounds awesome. Okay,
yeah, they're super
awesome.
Cool.
Thanks so much, Luke. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.